Random summoning, the most deadly. Having an unreliable system, Yi expressed that his heart was too tired. The new book, My Dreams Can Change History, has been released. You can take a look when you have free time. Keywords of the novel. Marvel's Random Summoning with no pop-ups, complete collection download of Marvel's Random Summoning TXT, latest chapter reading of Marvel's Random Summoning. Chapter 1. Marvel's Bored Daily Life. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Marvel's Bored Daily Life in a small shop in Brooklyn, New York, USA. Another boring day. Yi stretched lazily, took the yellow talisman that had been stuck to her head while sleeping, and walked out of the counter. Looking at the shop that was not visited again, Yi started counting and said, "It's going to be the 5th again. I haven't earned the rent for this month yet. If it continues like this, my wife will be gone." Sigh. Yi, are you there? Accompanied by knocking on the door, a crisp sound came from outside. I'm here, Anna. Just as I thought of you, you came. This is our tacit understanding, right? Yi heard the sound and his face was a bit sad, but he still teased Anna outside the door with his mouth. Stinky kid, you dare to tease me. Did you forget my mom's lesson to you? Anna's face turned red, but she didn't want to be outdone and widened her eyes. I dare not, I don't want to be chased and beaten by Aunt Chris. By the way, Anna, I was just about to close the door. Do you want to go eat together? Yi quickly waved his hand and said, I heard that a new restaurant has opened in Chinatown recently, and the taste is very good. No need, my mom asked me to come over and collect the rent. I see that your business doesn't seem to be doing well, why don't I tell my mom to slow it down for you? Anna looked at Yi and felt like she needed to help. No need, Anna. I still have some money. As you know, my business won't open for 3 years, but I'll eat it for 3 years. There's still the remaining money from the last exorcism. Here, Anna. Here's the rent for this month. Yi took out money from his pocket and invited Anna again. Anna, are you really not going? I'm not going anymore. The last time I went out with you, I met Jason and almost couldn't come back. But I'm afraid that if I go out with you this time, I won't be able to come back. Anna patted her chest, feeling lingering palpitations. That was an accident, absolutely an accident. Don't you know my abilities yet? Yi was very helpless. After all, anyone who suddenly encountered such a thing while eating would be afraid. And, Anna, I've become stronger again recently. Anna rolled her eyes and said, Cut, don't go. I'm leaving. You should be careful yourself. Someone has been inquiring about your news recently, so be careful. Are they clients? Yi's eyes lit up and he said, the last business was also a year ago, and there isn't much money left. Anna walked to the door and turned helplessly when she heard Yi's words. If it were a client, would I make you be more careful? They have a bit of my father's professional feeling on them. Agents. That's okay, I don't want to get involved with them. Yi spread out his hand. What you said doesn't count, be careful yourself. Anna pushed open the door and waved her hand at Yi. System, how long have I been in this world? Yi returned to the counter, crossed his hands, and dragged his chin. It's been 3 years now, it's been 3 years already. Counting the time, Marvel's official storyline is about to unfold. Yi looked at the time on his phone, April 17, 2008. System, what have I accumulated here for several years? Please make a list for me. The big era is about to start, and I don't expect to be in a hurry. Yi looked at the messy storage space and covered his face. The experience plot is as follows. Captain America 1, received a reward of 1 random summon count, summoned, obtained. Vector control, from the Magic Forbidden Book catalog. 1 party pass, fused. Obtain plot item. A replica of the Universe Rubik's Cube. X.men reverse the future and receive a reward of 1 random summon count. Summoned, obtain. Soul-slaying blade. Obtain storyline item. Sentinel robot. Death World randomly summon each month to obtain the following. Super Seminary Morgana will use her phone once. Holy Caesar will be on her phone once. Galaxy Power Xiongxin has 1 chance to use it. Death Team leader Yamamoto Yanagi will have 1 mobile phone meeting and 1 coaching opportunity. Blue Dai Sosuke has 1 chance to use the phone and 1 chance to use the broken jade. Saint Sagittarius Golden Cloak. A portion of Athena's divine blood. Hades projection card. I don't know if Steve has been rescued now, but we really miss the days we fought against the Red Skull together. Seeing the replica of the Rubik's Cube in the universe, Yi seemed to have returned to the time when he had just traveled to the United States. At that time, he was poor and penniless, so he had to create a dungeon. The first dungeon was AMP, L2, Captain America, AMP, GT, of course, when it comes to dungeons, it actually means crossing over to that era, and all actions will change history. If it weren't for defeating the Red Skull with the captain and raiding his small vault, I wouldn't have the money to rent a shop in New York. I'm afraid I'll be on the streets now. Yi shook his head and didn't think about it anymore. When he saw the Sentinel robot, he suddenly smiled and said, Charles Ball doesn't know what he's doing, and Logan doesn't know if he's regaining his memory. Is Eric planning to establish the mutant kingdom again? Has Katie and Scintillation joined the academy now? I guess he's just a little kid. Reversing the future was the most difficult world Yi had ever experienced. Without Logan and vector control, he would have died countless times. I remember when Eric was controlling the Sentinel prototype robot, he almost killed him. At this moment, there was a knock on the door, and Yi's memories were interrupted. As he grew older, he looked at the time. It was already past 8 o'clock. Who else would come? Who is it? Yi opened the door and looked. Surprisingly, it's you. Yi looked at the person outside the door and was stunned. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. A tragic day for the great Lord of Hell. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. A tragic day for the great Lord of Hell. Yi looked at Lucifer vomiting blood and was stunned. Hey buddy, you're the Lord of Hell. Who beat you up like this? Don't tell me you're tired of living and have to go find Gui. You should help me in first. Lucifer rolled his eyes, and Yi quickly helped Lucifer into the store. You sit down first, I'll go get some medicine for you. Yi searched back and forth in the cabinet and said, I found it. Well, Xiendo, you can recover all the injuries. It's cheaper for you. Chenghui, the essence of hell. Lucifer took the fairy beans and almost threw them out when he heard Yi's quote. You are more suitable to be a devil than me. You dare to take 10 servings of the essence of hell. Is this bean so expensive? Yi found 3 parts of the essence of hell in Lucifer's personal space and looked down at him with disdain. You're really poor, Xiao Lu. You carry 3 parts of the essence of hell with you. The bean in your hand is a strange object in the universe where strong people can easily explode stars. It can restore all injuries. If you don't want it, give it to me. As he spoke, Yi spread out his hand and gestured towards Lucifer. Don't even think about it. Anyway, you always come up with weird things. It's amazing. I feel like my injuries have all healed. Yi, I only have 3 parts of the essence of hell left. I used the rest in the battle just now, so I owe you for now. Lucifer finished eating the fairy beans and stood up to move his body. Whatever you want, you can't beat me anyway. You haven't said who beat you like this yet. Yi took advantage of Lucifer's physical activity and lay on the sofa. Mephisto and a few mysterious powerhouses, like one named Baal and the other named Diablo. There are still 2 powerhouses that are unclear, but they all seem to be using dark powers. Lucifer looked at Yi and was speechless. Ball and Diablo, isn't he meowing from Diablo? Yi felt a little headache and rubbed his forehead hard. Did the world of Diablo merge with this world? I don't know what kind of moth is going to emerge. Do you know the origins of the two of them? Lucifer looked at Yi, waiting for his answer. He knew that Yi had a magical source of intelligence. Well, Bar and Diablo come from a world called the Shelter. In the world of the Shelter, Mephisto and Bar, and Diablo are the three demon gods. According to reason, they should be. As Gui looked at them, they should not have appeared in this world. Yi felt his brain ache even more, and he had a bold guess. What does Gui do, to guard against us being like thieves, when demons from other worlds easily sneak in like this? Lucifer almost cried in anger. Supreme Master Gui, the guardian of the earth, is guarding against known and unknown latitudes. Gui has set up barriers to prevent powerful beings like Lucifer from entering the earth's latitude. Maybe there's a problem with Gui's side. Yi rubbed his head even harder, and the already chaotic timeline showed the shadow of a shelter, which, needless to say, was also related to himself. Are you recuperating here, or what should you do? Yi looked at Lucifer with a disdainful expression on his face. At least we are also comrades fighting side by side, fighting against the invasion of the ancient god of death. Speaking of which, the boy from Greece who inherits the title of death now is called Hades. Lucifer looked at Yima reluctantly, feeling very helpless. Do you think that if it weren't for you saving the world once, I would have let you go into this world later? I'm afraid I would have wanted you to die. Yi pursed his nose and looked at Lucifer with his eyes as if he were watching a dead fish. All right, I'll first cultivate myself with you, and then I'll find a few friends to kill back to hell. Are you going? Lucifer gritted his teeth. No, it's too troublesome. I'll just keep an eye on my shop. Yi's little thumb flicked back and forth in his nose, then pulled out a large ball and bounced it away, his expression relaxed. All right, I'll go upstairs to rest first. If there's anything you need, call me, Lucifer said as he walked up the stairs. No matter how many times I see you, I still feel that your gesture is disgusting. Get out. Yi had veins on his head and raised his cup as if to smash it. Lucifer quickly went upstairs. Ah, it's a tumultuous autumn. Yi put down his cup and looked at the ceiling, lost in thought. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Becoming Era. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Becoming Era. I have been taking in Lucifer for several days now, and Lucifer is not idle either. He has helped Yi deal with several supernatural incidents. Just as he was dealing with a demon invasion in Chinatown, Yi saw on the TV in the stairwell that Tony Stark had disappeared in Afghanistan. Yi waved to Lucifer and said, "Don't play anymore. After dealing with it, hurry back. We have to be busy in the future." Alright, Mammon wants to come in real life, he thinks he's me. Lucifer casually threw the little devil back to hell. Tell Mammon, if you want to live, stay honest in hell. When I die, he will be the ruler of hell. Don't think too much while I'm alive. You don't want that interesting soul anymore. Yi looked at Lucifer with interest. Isn't that the soul you've always wanted? Constantine, that kid, according to you, is also the protagonist of a world. With added energy, it's not that easy to get it, and you wouldn't watch me collect his soul, would you? Lucifer finished throwing away the little devil and turned to look at Yi. He will still be useful in the future, and I won't let you collect his soul. Yi spread his hands helplessly. Let's go. Returning to the store and preparing to pour some water, the system spoke, ding, post a task. Save Tony Stark, protect Tony Stark from being killed by the 10 Commandments gang. Task reward. Randomly summon once, open the system mall. Lao Lu, can you help me keep an eye on the store? I'll be out for 2 days. Yi looked at the task released by the system and said helplessly to Lucifer, "I'm going to be a nanny for 2 days." Lucifer nodded and said, "You go and clean my kids' butt, too." System, transmit to near Tony Stark. Ding, it has been teleported near Tony Stark, consuming 1 teleportation token. Yi looked around at the desolate surroundings and pursed his lips. I said, why is the US military so useless in the movie? They can't even find anyone. It's just a hidden place without teleportation symbols. I guess I'll have to look for it for a while. Tony hasn't woken up yet. Let's wait for 2 days. Yi threw a capsule onto the ground, and with a bang, a house appeared in front of him. Yi set up an invisible formation around him and went into the room to sleep. Tony woke up from the cave and remembered that he was almost killed by his company's missiles. When death was so close to him, he couldn't help but think of how many weapons he had sold, and whether others had watched those with Stark's name die before they died, and could only silently die. With this realization, Stark had some thoughts in his heart, but the most important thing now was to escape. With Ethan's help, he controlled the shrapnel near his heart and created Mark I armor. Just as Ethan was buying time for Tony, Yi appeared invisibly at the entrance of the cave. Looking at the guard at the door and the bald man holding a handheld missile launcher, Yi couldn't help but feel grateful. Fortunately, I caught up and ran into the ruins of Lulan ancient kingdom in the desert. I was trapped for 3 months, but Ethan was still shot. At this moment, Tony came out wearing Mark I and saw Ethan lying on the ground. Just as he was about to go over and help Ethan up, Ethan shouted, "Be careful," and Bald Head also thought about Tony launching a missile. In the movie, the missile did not hit Tony, which was necessary for the plot. In reality, he wasn't that lucky. When the missile was less than 20 centimeters away from Tony, he was already desperate. He closed his eyes and walked the marquee, recalling his father Howard Stark, Pepper, and Rod. After waiting for a long time, Tony didn't feel the expected pain or impact in his body. He opened his eyes and saw a man wearing a dark brown windbreaker, with his right hand against a missile and his left hand swinging back and forth. The members of the 10 Precepts gang were also knocked out with the wave. The man turned his head and saw a non-handsome Asian face, with long bangs covering half of his face. His black eyes showed impatience. Have you seen enough? If you look at the old man on the ground again, he will die. Yi held the missile with his right hand and turned to look at Tony, who had been staring at him, very impatient. He clenched his right hand tightly, the missile exploded, and the explosive force was cancelled out by vector control, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Turning around, Tony was listening to Ethan speak. Yi watched quietly until Tony stood up, put on his mask, and said to Yi, "I don't know who you are, but I'm very grateful that you saved me." Tony's voice came from behind the Iron Man mask and he turned around, "Do you want to come together? I won't get involved anymore." Yi waved his hand and Tony saw the situation. He went out on his own, just like the plot. Tony opened his hand's flamethrowers and lit all the weapons outside the cave, shouting at Yi, "Come over here, it's about to explode. I'll take you out." Yi smiled and shook his head. "You should go out on your own first. As you saw earlier, the explosion won't hurt me, but it's you. You're running out of energy, right?" Tony remembered what happened earlier, nodded, pressed the control panel on his arm, and flew away. Ding, task completed, reward randomly summoned once, mall opened. Summoning, just saving someone, I feel like I'm going to get something I can't do. Yi squinted his eyes, rubbed his hands, and looked lewd. The explosion outside the cave was still ongoing, but it couldn't even enter Yi's body, and his energy was neutralized. Randomly turn on the big wheel, ding, draw. Yi widened his eyes and didn't expect his luck to be so good that he would smoke. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. European-style lottery and warm memories. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. European-style lottery in warm memories, ding, draw a punch to Superman World, Chiyu projection card, consumables, remaining times. 1. I said, the system, you have changed your gender, and even gave me Chiyu's card. No, according to your temperament, there should be an enemy that I cannot deal with coming, right? Playing with the card in his hand, Chiyu's bald head and dead fish eyes were still so eye-catching, and from the outside, it was impossible to see the appearance of the strong. Yi looked up at the sky, gazing at the boundless universe. Ding, guess what? The mechanical sound of the system is still so cheap. I don't guess, but I'll know by then. Yi pouted and fell into memories. After all, there were too many unreliable times in this system. Just like before the final battle in Captain America 1, the mission rewarded Yi with a resurrection cross, which he thought could be kept for the future. However, in the final battle, the Red Skull actually activated the power of the cosmic Rubik's Cube. The power of space squeezed Captain and Yi. The Red Skull held the cosmic Rubik's Cube and a brilliant light hit Yi. At the moment of the hit, it turned Yi into flying ash. Fortunately, there was a resurrection cross. In a pitch-black space, watching the cross reshape his body, he could only see it with his eyes. Watching the Red Skull prepare to kill Steve, at this moment, the Rubik's Cube in the Red Skull's hand shone brightly. The power of the Rubik's Cube transported the Red Skull away, and Steve didn't have time to find Yi. He looked at the city on the map and flew towards the South Pole on a plane. Steve connected to the communication at Hydra Base, told Carter that he wanted to make an emergency landing on the water, and told Carter that this was his choice. Looking at the photo of Carter in his hand, he said to Carter, "Peggy, I won't be able to dance with you until later." Carter's beautiful big eyes shed tears, and he pursed his lips tightly. "Okay, next Saturday, start club," he said Steve. "It's a deal." Carter's voice choked up as he said, "At exactly 8 o'clock, you're not allowed to be late, you know." Steve suppressed the uncomfortable feeling in his heart and said, "I still don't know how to dance." Peggy closed his eyes, suppressed the pain in his heart, opened his eyes, tears streaming down uncontrollably, choked up, and said to the communicator, "I will teach you, as long as you appear." Steve. Requesting the band to slow down the song, "I don't want to step on you." At this moment, communication was cut off. Carter, with a crying voice, kept shouting, "Steve, Steve." Steve bit his lips. "I'm sorry, Carter, I'm going to break up." At the moment when the captain's spaceship collided with the South Pole, Yi's body was also reshaped and came out of the resurrection space. Watching the spaceship collide with the South Pole in the air, Yi also fainted due to the recent resurrection and consumed a lot of energy. He fell from the air and smashed a big hole in the snow. Yi woke up a month later and the first thing he did was to search for Steve. After a week, he finally found the frozen Steve in Antarctica. Looking at him, Yi reached out and wanted to rescue the captain. "Ding, host, are you sure you want to save him now?" The system's voice sounded before Yi's hand touched the captain. "The captain who is being saved now will have a completely chaotic timeline in the future. So what should I do?" Watching Steve freeze like this for decades. And that poor Carter, but he's been waiting for him. Yi's eyes were red, and a flame of anger burned in his heart. "Ding, host, think about it. You actually have the ability to make Steve and Carter meet, even though it's only one chance." The system looked at the angry Yi and made a suggestion. Are you talking about dreaming?" Yi thought of the reward for saving Barnes at the time, but thought it wasn't very useful, but now it's different. "How do we operate it?" "Ding, this system can handle it, but after this time, your ability to dream will be permanently eliminated as a cost. Are you sure you want to do this?" The sound of the system at this moment was so pleasant to Yi's ears. "Sure, just eliminate it. I can't use it anyway, although it's a pity that I can't molest Miss in my dream in the future." Yi nodded firmly. Carter, who was far away at the Hydra base, suddenly fainted. Colonel Phillip and members of the Roaring Assault team hurriedly took care of Carter. Opening his eyes again, Carter Peggy found himself in the Stark Club. The ball had just begun, and Carter looked at the calendar hanging on the wall. It was Saturday. While Carter was daydreaming, Steve Rogers' voice came over. "Carter, what are you daydreaming about? Come teach me how to dance." Carter slowly turned his head and looked at Steve standing there with a smile. Tears welled up and he stumbled toward Steve, throwing himself into his arms. Carter enjoyed Steve's warm embrace and looked up. "Steve, am I dreaming? If it's a dream, don't wake up." Steve hugged Carter tightly and forcefully, as if trying to integrate him into his body, his eyes also turning red. Upon hearing Carter's words, Steve turned his head to look at Yi behind him and said, "I don't know what's going on. I remember hitting the ground and waking up to see Yi. He asked me if I would like to dance with you." Carter only then saw Yi smiling at the two behind Steve and shyly pushed him away, wiping away the tears from the corners of his eyes. "Sorry, Yi, I was too excited to see Steve and didn't see you," he said. Yi smiled slightly and said, "It's okay, Peggy. I'm telling you the question just now. It's a dream, and only the three of us in this dream are real. You've been unconscious for over a month since Steve lost contact, and I only found him today. However, due to current technology, I can't save Steve now. But I don't want you to be too sad, so I want you two to fulfill that late promise in your dream. Then, Steve, let's dance." Carter twisted his skirt in both hands. "Okay, Peggy." Steve hugged Carter and slowly danced to the music. Yi watched them like this. With the music, the house gradually disappeared, and people also disappeared one by one. Neither Steve nor Carter noticed this. At this time, Steve was not the captain of the United States or a soldier, just an ordinary person dancing with his beloved. Kat was no longer a soldier, not a spy, just an ordinary woman eager to love her. Yi's face gradually turned white, his body shook slightly, and blood slowly flowed from the corners of his mouth. However, the smile on his face remained the same, and the smile at the corners of his mouth did not change. Finally, as the song came to an end, Steve and Carter regained their senses and noticed something unusual around them. They saw Yi with blood on his lips and quickly approached her. "What's wrong with you, Yi?" Carter held a tissue and wanted to wipe away the blood from the corners of Yi's mouth, but before the tissue touched Yi, it turned into a light and slowly drifted away from Carter's fingers. "Is this?" Steve also looked at Yi with a serious expression on his face. Yi waved his hand, wiped away the blood from the corners of his mouth, and smiled at Steve and Carter, saying, "Everything here is a dream, and dreams also need energy to support them. After all, you are too far away. Do you have anything else to say to each other? I can't hold on anymore." Steve and Carter smiled at each other and bowed to Yi, saying, "Thank you, Yi. You've done enough. It would be satisfying if we could meet again." Yi finally couldn't hold on anymore and sat down. Everything around him began to collapse, and the bodies of the three slowly turned into light from their feet. Yi Cheung stood up and looked at Carter. "You'd better go back and freeze yourself, wait for Steve to come back. Steve will take decades to come back." Carter looked at Steve, who nodded and turned his head to Yi, saying, "I want to first eliminate the remnants of the nine-headed snake. Once I finish this, I will freeze myself." As the radiance reached his chest, Steve nodded at Yi and said, "Thank you, Yi." He then turned his head and looked at Carter affectionately. "Wait for me." Carter also gazed affectionately at Steve, his radiance reaching his neck, and said to him, "I'll wait for you." As the two bid farewell to each other, only Yi remained in the entire dream space. Finally, the space shattered, and Yi suddenly spat out blood and passed out in a coma. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Lucifer leaving and tears drifting in the air. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Lucifer leaving and tears drifting in the air. Well, is it easy to remember when people get old? Yi put the card in his hand into the storage space and walked out of the cave. Outside the cave, there was a mess, and the raging flames were not yet extinguished. Several lucky members of the 10 Precepts gang were also moaning loudly. Tony seems to have landed safely. Yi spread his wings of the wind behind him. Let me go take a look. Don't fall to death, but the mission has been completed. Tony shouldn't have died, right? Feeling uneasy, Yi looked around in the air, searching for Tony's trace. About 2 hours later, Yi found Tony. At this time, Tony had already been protected by the US military. Yi looked at the two in the sky and muttered to himself, Rod wouldn't have secretly fallen in love with Tony, would he? He's so nervous about Tony, maybe. Oh, disgusting, it seems like he should stay away from them. Yi shivered coldly. Tony and Rod below suddenly had their hair rising, as if they were being targeted by some wild beast. Rod looked around and saw that they were all his own people, very safe. He turned his head and said to Tony, "Is Happy Jeep fun?" Tony showed a bitter smile, and Rod placed one hand on Tony's shoulder and said seriously to him, "Next time in my car, okay?" Then he hugged Tony tightly. Yi saw this and knew that Tony was temporarily safe. With a sigh of relief, he turned towards the place where he landed 3 months ago, put away his invisibility formation, turned the house back into a capsule, and called out to the system, "System, take me home, I miss my bed." Ding, successful transmission, consumes 1 return symbol. Oh, you're back. Why have you been there for so many days? Isn't it like being a nanny for 2 days? Lucifer was crossing his legs and watching TV drinking red wine when Yi stood in between him and the TV. Don't mention it, I thought I would be back in 2 days, but I got trapped in the ruins of Lulan. Give me a cup, I'm so thirsty. Yi walked to the sofa, sat down, and came to lie down with Guyu. Lulan ruins. That's the ancient mortal kingdom. Lucifer poured a glass of red wine for Yi and asked in surprise, "Isn't that just a mortal kingdom? Can it still trap you?" Yi took the cup and drank it all in one gulp. Don't mention it, I don't know which one got lost. He sealed the gluttony there, and the young master almost capsized his sewer. He wiped his mouth and cursed with hatred, "If I know anyone, I'll have to skin them." Isn't that right? Even if it's a glutton, it shouldn't be your opponent, right? Lucifer looked at Yi strangely. After all, he knew Yi's strength, and the 7 rulers of hell couldn't do anything about him. There might still be a few strange props left behind. This gluttony, it seems to be the one from ancient times, was summoned by the Lulan people for some reason, destroying the Lulan kingdom. Later, when the gluttony was raging everywhere, it was sealed in the ruins of Lulan. Yi recalled the strong bad breath of the gluttony, who had originally wanted to eat something but lost his appetite. Okay, it's really difficult to deal with a full gluttony, Lucifer shrugged and looked at Yi with pity as he turned off his appetite. By the way, in the months you've been traveling, Gu-Yi has come to see you. Lucifer remembered something. Gu-Yi said that Domum is coming, and swallowing stars have appeared not far from the Milky Way. Do you have time to join the war? Domum. Swallowing the star. Yi heard these 2 names, already lying like a salted fish, and became even more lethargic. 1 is enough trouble, there are still 2 more. Now I can only wrestle with Domum, swallowing the star. Let's forget it. There's no such thing as an ancient god that's easy to deal with. Yi felt that he had been experiencing headaches a bit frequently lately, covering his head with both hands and rubbing it hard. Lucifer looked at Yi and pursed his lips, saying, "You're just lazy. If you work hard, who else would be your opponent?" Thinking that Yi's sleeping ability was growing every day, he envied, and hated him. "Give me a break, I'm just an ordinary person. If it weren't for the death god who wants to destroy the world and kill all life, I wouldn't have taken action. Yi covered his head with a pillow. That way, it would be great for me to look at my shop every day. Never mind, I'm going back to hell. Lucifer stood up and moved his muscles. That scumbag Mephisto, I must stuff his head into his buttocks this time. Are you okay with your injury? Yi continued to spread out, but slightly opened the pillow. How many people are they? Can I help you? No need, I have already contacted a few friends to deal with them together. Lucifer opened the portal to hell, and inside it was hell, a hot, decaying world. Then walk slowly, remember to owe me 7 points of the essence of hell. Yi waved his hand and gestured for Lucifer to quickly get lost. I'll have Constantine deliver it to you later. Lucifer's voice came from the smaller and smaller portal. Cut, that guy Constantine, it seems like I've been running into Lucifer while I'm away. Yi, who was lying on the sofa, slowly closed his eyes. The exhaustion of the past few months surged in his heart, and his snoring gradually began to sound. Sister Hua, I miss you so much. A glimmer of crystal clear, counter-gravity, shattering in the air, end of this chapter. Hello Chapter 6, my name is Phil Colson. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hello Chapter 6, my name is Phil Colson. The sound of gunshots on the street woke Yi up. Yi rubbed his eyes and yawned. Stretching lazily, Yi walked to the window. The lights were already brightly lit outside, and several stars were twinkling in the sky. Without any moonlight, he looked down and saw a group of robbers robbing a middle-aged white man. Meanwhile, there was a pervert changing clothes in the phone booth on the nearby street. Yi squinted his eyes and said, "This is a death attendant. Is it definitely a death attendant?" He is indeed a pervert. The pervert at the phone booth suddenly raised his head and glanced in Yi's direction before continuing to change clothes. Going back to sleep, lying on the sofa for such a long time, my waist hurts so much. Yawning, Yi turned around and returned to the room, throwing his body onto the double bed, twisting back and forth, and rolling the cup onto his body, like a silkworm baby. Ah, comfortable, comfortable. Yi moaned and wriggled, wondering what she was doing. At that moment, the news conference held after Tony Stark returned was replayed on the TV outside. From this moment on, I will close Stark Enterprises' weapons manufacturing factory until one day, I can determine the company's future, find my most satisfactory development direction, and bring the greatest benefits to the United States and the world. Obadiah Stan, a veteran of the Stark Corporation with Tony's father, has been helping the stubborn Stark wipe his butt since Howard's death. A kind-hearted uncle continues to help Tony wipe his butt. The most important thing now is that Tony has returned, he is very healthy, and we will provide further information before and after. Obadiah Stan, after seeing off Tony, was dealing with the excited journalist. Next is uncle and nephew turning against each other, right? Yi was still wriggling his body, turning on the bedroom TV and watching the replay. Do you want to liven it up? Yi, who had not forgotten to twist, accidentally fell into bed. Well, it's still early now, let's talk about it later. Yi, who fell down, straightened up a carp and returned to the bed, continuing to wriggle, returned to Tony's side. After leaving the venue, Tony arrived at the arc reactor, the Thinker. After the press conference, Obadiah also found Tony here. Looking at Tony, Obadiah took a deep puff of his cigar and crossed his waist, feeling a bit helpless. Look at what you've done, he said. Tony also knows how much pressure his actions have brought to Obadiah, and he feels embarrassed to look at him. Are you turning me into a target? Obadiah, frowning, walked over and said, Are you a target? I think it's me. How much do you think the stock price will drop tomorrow? Tony lowered his head and untied his tie, optimistically estimated. 40%. At least. That's right. Now Obadiah, beside Tony, spoke deeply and said to him, Tony, we are a weapons manufacturer. Obadiah, I just don't want to die too many people. Our profession is hardware, which means manufacturing weapons. After some debate, Obadiah compromised. Let me take a look, Tony. Tony pouted while unbuttoning his shirt from the collar, revealing the small reactor on his chest. Obadiah saw the reaction furnace emitting white light on Tony's chest and buttoned it, his expression mixed with surprise and relief. Obadiah hugged Tony and said, "Let's cooperate. There's nothing we can't do in the world, just like your father and I used to. Don't do things that put the cart before the horse. You must leave everything to me to handle. Promise me and keep a low profile, okay?" The two uncles and nephews who had finished their conversation walked side by side. Returning to Yi Yi's side, the exorcism shop that has been closing since Afghanistan finally received a guest today. "Excuse me, is anyone there? Please help me." The knocking on the door woke up Yi Yi, who was still bedridden. Yi Yi lifted his head and shouted weakly, "No one." Turning his head, he was ready to sleep again. The knocking on the door was still ringing, becoming increasingly urgent, and the voice outside the door was also becoming more fearful. "I know you're at home, magical Chinese, please help me." Yi Yi reluctantly twisted twice, but the knocking outside did not stop. As a last resort, Yi Yi had to wake up. Yi Yi opened the door, and outside was a 30.40-year-old Asian woman with a delicate face filled with fear. The woman was accompanied by a middle-aged man who was somewhat bald, with a very friendly smile on his face. He reached out his hand to Yi Yi and smiled, saying, "Hello, my name is Phil Colson." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. The Confused Colson. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. The confused Colson. Yi Yi looked at the balding middle-aged man and couldn't help roast. "You have become bald, but you have not become strong." Colson's expression. Colson smiled awkwardly and politely, pointing to the woman who was still pretending to be infatuated. "This is my wife, Melinda. She has been like this since she returned from her trip, you." Before Colson could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Yi Yi. "I know who you are, Colson, and I also know who she is, Melinda, Iron Cavalry, and I know your organization, What Kind of Game?" Yi Yi smiled and said, "May, you don't have to pretend anymore. Besides feeling a bit of a shadow in your heart, your body is much healthier than Colson's. Come on in, it's windy outside." Yi Yi waved at Colson and May, turned around, and returned to the store. "Bring the door, thank you." Colson felt a difference in his heart, but there was no trace on his face, only the very approachable smile was gone. May no longer pretended and returned to her original expressionless expression. "Do you seem to know us?" Colson spoke with respect, as his organization was very secretive and unknown to the outside world. "Sit down first, I have no ill intentions towards you." Yi Yi pointed to Colson's sofa, "Coffee or tea?" "No need, thank you." Yi Yi poured himself a cup of tea and said, "The National Defense and Logistics Bureau is an international defense organization established by Carter, Philip, Howard, and others." Yi Yi took a sip of tea and continued, "Your authority should know my name is Yi Yi." Yi Yi put down his cup, crossed his hands and dragged his chin, his eyes shining with a light. "Did Steve come out? Did Carter thaw? The captain has not been rescued yet, the range has been roughly determined, and time is still needed to detect. Captain Carter is still frozen." In Colson's horrified gaze, the secret in the bureau couldn't help but be revealed. May next to him noticed Colson's abnormality when he first spoke, got up to subdue Yi Yi, but found herself unable to move. "What did you do to Colson? Let go of me." May's muscles were trembling all over. Yi Yi waved his hand to relieve the pressure on May and the spiritual induction of Colson. He took a sip of tea and said, "Relax, lady. I just care about my old friend." The cup was placed on the table, looking at Colson and May who were already pointing their guns at them. They shrugged helplessly and said, "What do you think I want to do to you? Can you resist? Put down the gun, I don't like that thing pointing at my head. Also, can the sniper outside move the muzzle?" Thinking about Yi Yi's ability just now, Colson and May exchanged a glance and reluctantly put down their guns. May pressed her finger on the earphone in her ear and said, "The first and second groups retreat." Yi Yi smiled and said to Colson, "Is that right? Look, there's nothing going on, isn't there?" Colson smiled bitterly and said, "Sir, this is not funny. If you make an agent reveal a secret, it also means that the agent is useless." Yi Yi shook his head and looked at Colson meaningfully, "Don't think you're a nobody, you'll become a big shot in the future." Upon hearing Yi Yi's words, Colson and May exchanged a glance and asked, "Sir, can you explain the point?" "I'm just a small agent, not a big shot." Yi Yi leaned against the sofa and lazily looked at the ceiling. "After I said yes, don't ask anything else. Just go back and have your director check the files," he said, interrupting his desire to continue asking. Colson said to May, "The future is not static. You need to be certain of this, and you, Colson, the world is big. Sometimes self-sacrifice does not bring honor, and it can put a lot of pressure on those who care about you." After finishing speaking, Yi Yi picked up his cup and May grabbed Colson, who wanted to continue speaking. She bowed to Yi Yi and pulled Colson away, closing the door as she left. Sitting on the sofa, Yi Yi held a cup and a wisp of green smoke blocked her face. Colson and May, they are really an interesting duo. Colson, sitting in the car, asked May, "Why are you pulling me away? There are still many things I haven't figured out." May rolled her eyes and said, "Did you sleep through all your etiquette classes? What does that person mean by holding tea in China? Are you trying to anger that dangerous person?" After thinking for a moment, Colson felt a bit embarrassed and said, "I'm sorry, May. I was too surprised just now." Then Colson's face changed and he said, "This is a dangerous person, May. We need to report it to the director." May was almost laughed at in anger, looking at Colson, who used to be very calm, but now he looked helpless and understood. After all, those who can control their thoughts are dangerous people. Well, for example, a bald Professor Yi Yi put down his cup and walked into the bedroom. He looked at a black and white photo of a man wearing a starry striped costume, which was very eye-catching. A group of burly men surrounded the man, with a very beautiful girl and a burly man on either side. In the far corner, an Asian man smiled and looked at them. "Well, it's almost time. We'll be drinking together soon." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Gu Yi's Invitation, Uncle Tun's Coming. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Gu Yi's Invitation, Uncle Tun's Coming. Leaving aside Colson, who returned to the Divine Shield Bureau to report to Black Soy Egg, Yi Yi slept until the next night. Yi Yi stretched lazily, got up from the warm bed, rubbed his eyes, and walked to the bathroom to wash up. Before he could finish washing up, someone knocked on the door downstairs again. "Who is it? Don't take a look at what time it is, we're off work. The foam at the corners of the mouth has not been cleaned, so I am very angry. I, Koichi, open the door." The female voice outside the door was clear and crisp, but her name shook the world. "I'm going, Master Gu Yi." "Why are you here?" Yi Yi casually fooled his face and hurriedly went downstairs. Opening the door, what caught my eye was a bald head reflecting moonlight. Yi Yi only felt that he had been blindfolded. He covered his face with both hands. "Ah, my eyes." Gu Yi looked at Yi Yi, who was being cute and cheap, but he wasn't angry either. He just smiled and watched Yi Yi perform. The scene was once very awkward. Yi Yi secretly opened a gap between his middle and ring fingers, observing whether Gu Yi was angry. Seeing Gu Yi still smiling, he breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. "Ah, Master Gu Yi, sit inside. It's quite windy outside, don't catch a cold." Yi had some dog legs and helped Gu into the room, pouring tea and rubbing his shoulders. Well, not bad. Have you done something wrong lately? So attentive. Gu calmly enjoyed everything and turned his head to look at Yi with a smile. That's right, master. Since the last time, I've been very obedient and I've never done anything wrong. I'll give it 4. Yi raised his thumb, held down his little finger, raised the middle 3 fingers, and then let go of his little finger, looking serious. So are you so attentive? Gu looked at Yi suspiciously, recalling his ability to cause trouble when Koichi first arrived at Marvel. He discovered this non-existent alien species, Yi, and Yi did not exist in the long river of time. At that time, Koichi was still worried about the future of Earth. After discovering Yi, this non-existent alien species, he was ecstatic. After all, the future cannot be worse, can it? Then Gu kept an eye on Yi's growth. When Yi went to Captain America's dungeon, Gu noticed a change in the timeline. Carter was not dead. Howard loved his genius son very much, and although Barnes eventually disappeared, everything seemed to be moving in a good direction. But Yi was too jumping, which also gave Gu a headache. Yi somehow came into contact with the ancient death god who had not yet died in the river of time, leaked the latitude coordinates of the Earth civilization, and was discovered by the ancient death god. As a result, of course, the death god opened the portal, and his army invaded the Earth. Fortunately, Gu discovered it in time and set up a teleportation array near the space gate. The Legion of Death was teleported to Pluto as soon as they left the portal. While observing Lucifer of Constantine on Pluto, they were unlucky enough to be pursued by the Grim Reaper. Yi also knew that he had made a big mistake and spared no effort in using the several opportunities he had saved up for strong players to take action. The Burning Legion card he won in the monthly lottery in the US Team World, and the Death God World Hizaki Ichigo Possession card, consumables. Number 1, in the end, with the help of Koichi, Lucifer, and Ichigo Kurosaki, Yi successfully defeated the ancient god of death and his army back to the River of Time. In this battle, Yi was brought back to the Himalayas by Gu neither fighting nor scolding. Like a child who had made mistakes, he cultivated his character for half a year. But it was also during this half year that he learned about the greatness of this guardian. He, alone, erected a 1,000-year barrier for the Earth. Lucifer should be like this. In the absence of evil, Gu allowed Lucifer's non-energetic clone to descend into this world. Gu couldn't help but laugh when he thought of Yi, who was being cautious at the time. Yi looked at Gu who was laughing inexplicably, scratched his head, and his face was inexplicable. Gu also noticed that he was a bit distracted, as if he hadn't said anything about his arrival yet. He glanced at Yi, gestured for him to sit down, and then picked up the $15 per kilogram green tea brewed by Yi in Chinatown. He took a sip and said, "Swallowing stars is moving towards the Milky Way. What do you think?" He then looked at Yi. Yi is a bit stunned. He swallows stars and his full name is Planet Devourer. He is the only survivor of the previous universe and is now one of the 5 great deities in the universe. He feeds on planets and spends most of his time sleeping. Uncle Swallow. Yi frowned, feeling very troublesome. Gu looked at Yi and knew that he was trying to find a way. After a moment of thought, Gu said to Yi, "I can set up a teleportation array to teleport the swallowing star, but it needs to be outside the Milky Way. Those remnants of the old era that I have driven out may ambush me after I send the swallowing star. I need a guardian." Gu looked at Yi and nodded with a smile. Yi looked at Gu. Although Gu looked young, during those 6 months of interaction, Yi knew that Gu was tired, very tired, carrying a world and escorting it. For over 1,000 years, he had driven away the group of Eastern gods who had long been hidden, and the major Western gods who believed in themselves as gods. Gu protected the development of Earth's civilization and was not bound by faith. The remnants of that era always want to return, and this opportunity is a great one for them, an opportunity to seriously damage the guardians of the world. Yi looked at the cards in the warehouse and nodded at Gu Yi, taking on the task that could cost him everything and even lead to his death in battle. Gu Yi smiled and left. Just as Yi understood her, she also understood Yi. Yi, who was unrestrained and had his own persistence, was lazy, but he would never handle the things he promised. He is indifferent, but absolutely loyal to his friends. He is very greedy, but when his comrades are injured, he always takes out various strange props and tells them how much you owe me, but without hesitation, he uses them to protect their lives. Yi bid farewell to Gu Yi, returned to the sofa, lit a cigarette, took a deep puff, and the harmful nicotine filled his lungs before slowly exhaling, covering Yi's face. The room with the lights off was left with only flickering flames. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Sublimation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Sublimation. System, how many more chances do I have to summon? After a long time, Yi put down the already burned cigarette in his hand and threw it into the ashtray. Ding, the Lulan dungeon naturally accumulates 3 times a month, with 1 reward for sealing the gluttony. When sealing the gluttony, summon 3 times, and the remaining 1. The mechanical sound of the system is quite reliable, but if there is no next sentence, it becomes even cuter. I say, host, have you become an old fool and forgotten about the opening of the mall? This time, the system does not have a sharp tongue, pointing directly to the key problem. Yi was stunned for a moment and thought carefully. It seemed that after completing the task of saving Tony, the system mall opened. At that time, he was immersed in the excitement of drawing teacher Chiyu and didn't check it immediately. Later, he returned home to rest until now. If there were no system prompts, he probably wouldn't have remembered it all along. Well, System, help me open the mall and let me see what's inside. Yi scratched his head and turned off the lights in the room, covering up his flushed little face. Ding, Zai, I really have a hard time laying out your salted fish. The system opened the mall interface for Yi to see, while mocking. Other people who have obtained this system probably have already kicked and swallowed stars, and torn the universe. You salted fish, if you can't cause trouble, you'll be running around in the store for a few small coins, or you'll just have to sleep at home. Zai is really a strange creature crossing the world. Yi pretended not to hear it and carefully studied the things in the mall. Soul-slaying blade. Random ability, priced at 200 mall points. Golden Sacred Clothes, priced at 500 mall points, Teleportation Talisman. 10 mall points, Super Theological Academy Mogana Projection. 10,000 mall points, Wilderness Plain Pangu Projection. 1,000 W mall points. Yi drooled as he looked at the things in the mall, but the big 0 in the bottom right corner was very glaring. Yi sighed and said, System, how can I obtain a shopping mall point? Don't tell me to create happiness with salary. Ding, host, congratulations. You have come to understand the mystery of Krypton. The mechanical voice of the body, with a hint of mockery, despised Yi as a poor person. Yi's veins jumped up and down on his head, glaring angrily. If the system appeared in front of him, he would definitely shout at it with size 44 shoes. Trembling as he prepared to close the mall interface, he suddenly realized that, to the left of the glaring balance 0, there is a recycle/sacrifice button. Ignoring the incessant mocking of Yi's system, he asks, what is this recycle and sacrifice for? Ding, host, I wonder if you haven't graduated from elementary school, or if your Chinese was taught by a physical education teacher. Literally, recycling means recycling items that you don't need or temporarily don't need. Sacrifice is powerful, and you can sacrifice all tangible or intangible beings, such as emotions, planets, and the body of a strong person. Anything of value can be sacrificed. After the sacrifice, feedback is given based on the value of the sacrifice, perhaps it is strength or the strong person's affection. Everything is possible. Yi didn't hear all the mockery from the system, only saw that the recycling price behind the replica of his own universe Rubik's Cube was 1,000 mol points. Yi finally couldn't help but say, "System, although this is an A-grade product, it is also an infinite gem, right? What the hell is the recycling price of 1,000? I saw it and wanted to buy it for 1,000,000. Ding, the host of Fish Lips. Can buying and selling be the same? Stain, sure enough, your brain has already rusted." Yi closed his eyes and muttered to himself, "I'm not angry, I'm not angry, I'm not angry, I'm angry." A strong pressure spread from Yi, and everything in the room seemed to be blown up. Suddenly, a knife appeared in his hand, and Yi closed his eyes. He jumped up from the window and flew into the sky. Yi landed on an isolated island, and upon observation, the island was dead and the signs of life seemed to be erased. This small island was in line with Yi's wishes, and he waved his knife in his hand. The knife swung in that direction, and cracks appeared on the ground in that direction. The cracks were deep, as if piercing through the earth's crust. Yi waved wildly, venting his complex emotions. It's not entirely the venomous tongue of the system that drives Yi crazy. The approach of Uncle Swallow, the small movements of Domum's dark latitude, coveting the three palaces of Earth, the danger has already arrived. It's just that Yi himself doesn't want to believe it and hopes that others will come to save him and fight. Yes, Yi was afraid. Although Jing Guan appeared firm in front of Gu Yi, Yi was still afraid. Before Yi's time traveling, he was just an ordinary person who grew up under the red flag and became unemployed after graduation. He was not the typical war king, superpower, or master of Chinese martial arts in novels. He was just an ordinary person who couldn't even cook and never erased any other life. He is not like other travelers, thinking about going crazy and causing things after crossing over. He is the biggest one. After crossing through, Yi almost starved to death. After being bound by the system, he went to Captain America's world and encountered the American team who had not yet injected super soldier potions. Although he continued to fight behind the American team, the main pressure was on them to carry it on. Yi was just playing soy sauce and helping. On the spaceship, Yi, who was hit, also felt death, but with the presence of the resurrection cross, he was not at all panicked. Now, Yi, who had no means of resurrection, will participate in a high-level battle, a battle where he will die if he is not careful. Yes, Yi is venting. The toxic tongue of the system is just a trigger. Yi needs to vent her fear of death. The sun rose from the seaside and shone on the unrecognizable island, with cracks all over the island. The only intact one was the center of the island, where a person sat with a long sword in his right hand. His long bangs were tied in knots, and his originally clean and tidy windbreaker was covered in wrinkles. Sweat was low, leaving marks on his dusty face. His lips were tightly pursed, and on his straight nose bridge, a pair of deep eyes seemed like the universe was inside. "Ding, are you feeling better now?" A mechanical voice sounded with concern. With a strong support from his right hand, Yi stood up and patted the dust off his body. Looking back around, he smiled and stretched lazily, saying, "It's much better. Thank you. I've figured it out." He's an ordinary person. He used to be reckless when he was young and wanted to be a hero, but he didn't have that ability. Now that he has the ability, I want to be stubborn. Ding, you're welcome. If you don't vent it, you might go crazy before the battle. Host, you've grown. Looking at the island that was about to be destroyed, the knife in his right hand suddenly disappeared. Then, Yi flew up and headed towards his small shop. As we were about to arrive at the small shop, the system suddenly spoke, "Why don't you use teleportation symbols?" Yi looked at the small shop that could already see its outline and gritted his teeth. "Did you mean it on purpose?" Ding, guess what? Yi. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Preparation for War. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Preparation for War. Returning to his small shop, Yi rushed into the bathroom, turned on the water heater, took off his dirty clothes, put them in the washing machine for cleaning, and then tilted his head back and lay in the bathtub. Last night, after a crazy outburst and dispelling those fears, Yi squinted his eyes and continued to firmly believe in himself. I have been suppressed for more than 20 years. When I was a child, I worked hard to study for the happiness of my parents. After graduation, I had a girlfriend and had to take care of her. In front of my parents was my son, in front of my company was an employee, and in front of my girlfriend was my reliance. When can I be myself? Yi reached out and took a towel, wet it with water, and covered his face. Now, I am myself, living for myself, he said. Everyone, when they were young, always fantasized about what kind of person they would be in the future: scientist, doctor, police. However, most of all, I still fantasize about being a hero and being admired by others. As time goes by, people will grow up, and most of them will gradually distance themselves from their childhood dreams. Time has smoothed out the edges and made us all the same. Wearing masks, speaking against our wishes, doing things that don't go their way, just to survive. Gradually, Yi fell asleep and had a dream of memories he didn't want to recall. He went back to the past, broke up with his girlfriend after graduation, and wanted to start a business, but was hit hard by the cruel society. After all, society was not so beautiful. With some innocence, Yi was burdened with a lot of debt, worked hard, and didn't dare to tell his parents. The scene flashed by, and Yi returned to the night before his journey. The night was beautiful, and a meteor occasionally flashed across the distant sky. Yi dropped the remaining wine bottle in his hand and shouted loudly at the meteor, venting his dissatisfaction. The neighbors downstairs were constantly cursing, and Yi ignored it. Finally, he heard a reply: yes, the gift of the meteor. At night, Yi woke up from the bathroom with a sore back and waist. Looking at her wrinkled and white fingers, she couldn't help but smile bitterly. After drying his body, Yi walked to the window, sat down, and looked up at the sky. Tonight, the moon was very round and there were many stars. System, I want to summon. Yi looked at the beautiful moonlight. The moonlight was gentle, and the night breeze gently brushed his cheeks, causing his bangs to sway slightly. Ding, the summoning begins. Yi turned his head and looked at the extraction button in front of him. He casually twisted it, and the compass turned faster and faster. Ding, extract Spider-Man 3 Worlds, Venom, original version. Yi reached out his hand and took the slowly drifting venom. As soon as his fingers touched the venom, it slowly covered them. Yi watched quietly as the venom slowly spread to his eyes. Yi closed his eyes and felt the power it brought. The muscle reaction left by the last time Ichigo Kurosaki was further deepened with the help of the venom. Yi clenched his fists and carefully felt it. The venom brought by the system has been eliminated by the system, which has the ability to deceive people and only provides auxiliary capabilities for the host. Venom is a space creature. Wearing it, Yi no longer has to worry about breathing in outer space. The venom slowly turned into a casual suit, then into pajamas, and finally slowly peeled off from Yi's body, transforming into a black object in his hand. Yi let out a light sigh, placed the venom on the table, turned around and came to the bedside. He suddenly plunged into the bed, hugged the blanket, twisted left and right, and his face showed intoxication. All his troubles disappeared without a trace. So, after several days, Yi had just completed a business deal when Guyi's voice came over and said, "Yi, are you ready? We'll set off tomorrow night." Yi was slightly stunned, just picked up the peachwood sword that was about to be placed in the scabbard and fell to the ground. After regaining his senses, he picked it up again. Turn around and walk quickly towards Brooklyn. Pushing open the door, he looked at Gu-Yi who was drinking tea, pursed his lips, put the exorcism item back on the shelf, grabbed the teapot, poured a cup of tea, and drank it all in one gulp. Gui smiled and looked at Yi. After finishing his tea, Yi expressed dissatisfaction to Gui and said, "Master, it's not good to break into someone else's house without permission." Gui smiled slightly and ignored Yi. He reached out his hand and took out a magical tool, saying, "I have brought you this tool you used before. If you have used it before and know its effectiveness, I won't introduce it further. This time, besides telling you that you are leaving tomorrow, I also have something to tell you." Guyi's tone suddenly changed. "This time is no different from the last time. After sending off Swallow Star, I will lose my strength for 15 minutes. During this period, I will rely on you to fight against the gods. Are you ready?" Yi looked at Gui, although he was not ready yet, he nodded slightly. Faced with Gui, who trusted him so much, his nervousness remained unspoken. Gui opened the teleportation door and left, and Yi hung a sign outside the store to suspend business and closed the door. "System, I want to know how powerful Chiyu, Morgana, and Hades are in the universe." Ding, Chiyu, the protagonist of One Punch Superman, opens the limiter and has an infinitely powerful body. The combat power in the universe is weak. Morgana, from the Super Seminary, is known as the most evil demon king in the Super Seminary. Her combat power in the universe is strong. Hades, from the Saint, opens up the ninth sense of the divine, and has strong combat power in the universe, except for Teacher Chiyu, everything else is similar to what I thought. Yi heard the reply and kept tapping the table with his fingers. Is there any way for Chiyu to exert her strength in the universe? Yi asked the system. After all, Chiyu is the strongest combat power in her hand. Ding, you can use the mall item. Empire's Colosseum. The mall price is 1,000 mall points. Empire's Colosseum. It is possible to designate individuals who do not exceed the system's capabilities to be thrown into the No-Air Colosseum. Looking at this prop, Yi felt lost in thought. End of this chapter.